There's no money left. You need to handle your own kid, my dad told me. When I asked for help with my daughter's medical bills, then days later, he handed my brother the keys to a brand new SUV in front of everyone. I didn't waste another word on him after that. I just took my daughter home and remembered every word. A few months later, he called me needing help, and I gave him the same answer. Back. Hey, before we get into this one, quick favor. If you've been watching but haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. We're trying to grow this channel, and honestly, every single sub matters more than you think. It takes 1 second, and it helps us keep making these videos. All right, appreciate you. Let's get into it. My father said 6 words to me on a Tuesday afternoon that I will carry for the rest of my life. Handle your own kid, he said. Just like that. Like my daughter's medical bills were a chore I had been putting off, like a stack of dishes or a leaky faucet. He said it in his kitchen, standing by the counter, not even looking at me. He was reading the newspaper. I was holding a folder with hospital invoices that added up to more than I make in 4 months. He did not open the folder. He did not ask what was inside. He just said those 6 words and turned the page. A few months later, he called me needing something he could not fix alone. And I gave him the same 6 words back. Exact change. Same currency. Return to sender. My name is Nate. I am 32. My daughter, Lily, is 10. She wears glasses and reads books that are 2 grade levels above her because nobody told her she was supposed to stop at her own. I work as an electrician. Not the kind who sits in an office and draws plans. The kind who crawls through attics in August and runs wire through walls that have not been opened since 1974. I come home tired. I come home with tape residue on my fingers and drywall dust in my hair. And I come home to a girl who meets me at the door and tells me about her day like it is the most important news broadcast in the world. Everything I do runs through Lily. Every shift I pick up. Every dollar I save. Every decision I make about who deserves my time and who does not. She is not just my daughter. She is my compass. And this story is about the day my father told me she was not worth his help, and the day I told him the same thing about himself. Lily had surgery in March, a procedure on her left ear that she had needed for over a year. The doctors said it was not life-threatening, but it was not optional either. Without it, she would lose significant hearing on that side by the time she was 15. I sat in 3 different waiting rooms over the course of 2 months before the surgery date was confirmed. I filled out 14 forms. I talked to the insurance company 6 times, each time to a different person, each person asking me to repeat information the previous person had already recorded. The surgery took 4 hours. I sat in the waiting area with a vending machine coffee and a magazine I did not read. Every time the surgical wing doors opened, I looked up. Every time it was someone else's doctor, I looked back down. When her surgeon finally walked out and said, everything went well, I stood up so fast the coffee spilled on my boot, and I did not notice until I was already shaking his hand. The recovery took 9 days in the hospital. Room 412 at St. Anne's Children's Hospital. I sat beside her bed in a gray plastic chair with a crack down the left armrest that pinched my leg every time I shifted. I did not leave the room except to use the bathroom and buy coffee from a machine in the hallway that charged $2 for something that tasted like burnt water with ambition. The chair was uncomfortable. The room smelled like disinfectant and the faint sweetness of whatever they put in the IV drip. The whiteboard above Lily's bed had her name, her blood type, and her nurse's schedule written in green marker. She was brave. She did not cry once during the pre-op. She told the anesthesiologist that she wanted to be a marine biologist and asked him if he had ever seen a whale. He said he had not. She told him that was, honestly, kind of sad. The nurse laughed. I almost did. But my chest was too tight and my eyes were too full, and I was holding her hand like she was the one keeping me together, which she was. She kept the hospital bracelet after she was discharged. White plastic, her name printed in small blue letters. She wore it around the house for a week, showing it to the dog, showing it to her stuffed animals, holding her wrist up to the mirror so she could read her own name backwards. She did not know the bracelet came with an $11,000 bill. She just liked that it had her name on it, like she was famous. The bill arrived 2 weeks after we came home, on $11,214. That is a number that does not mean much when you read it on a screen. It means everything when it arrives in your mailbox with your name on it and a payment deadline at the bottom. Insurance covered the surgery itself. It did not cover the hospital room at the rate they charged, the anesthesia overage, the pharmacy costs, or the follow-up appointments that Lily would need every 6 weeks for the next year. I set up a payment plan. The monthly amount was more than I could handle without cutting something. So I cut things. Dinners out, gone. New clothes, patched the old ones. Oil changes pushed from every 3 months to every 5. I drove my truck with the check engine light on because the light was cheaper to ignore than the problem it was pointing to. Not I picked up extra shifts on Saturdays when my body was already sore from the week. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch because they cost 40 cents and they kept me standing until 5. I did not want to ask my father for help. I had not asked him for anything in years. The last time was 6 years ago when I needed a cosign for the apartment lease. He did it, but he mentioned it at Thanksgiving dinner like he was reading a receipt. I co-signed that lease for you, remember? Not a lot of fathers would do that. He said it in front of Kyle, in front of my mother, in front of Kyle's wife Amanda. He turned an act of fatherhood into a debt payment and presented the invoice at a holiday table. But the numbers for Lily's bills did not work. The payment plan plus rent plus groceries plus her follow-up copays left a gap I could not close with overtime alone. So I did something I had trained myself never to do. I asked. Tuesday afternoon, my father's kitchen. I drove there after a job. I was still in my work clothes, dust on my boots, tape on my fingers. I brought a folder. Brown. Standard size. Inside were 6 documents. The surgical estimate, the anesthesia bill, the hospital room charge, the pharmacy summary, the follow-up appointment schedule. And at the bottom, a handwritten note on a piece of lined paper. It said, "Dad, I would not ask if I had another option." My father was at the counter when I walked in. Standing, not sitting. He had the newspaper open in front of him, folded to the sports section. His reading glasses were on. His coffee mug was within reach, still steaming. My mother was somewhere in the back of the house. I could hear a television. I set the folder on the kitchen table between us. "Dad, I need to talk to you about something." He did not look up from the paper. "What is it?" "Lily's medical bills, the surgery and the follow-up appointments. The total is about $11,000. Insurance covered part of it, but the rest is on me. I set up a payment plan, but the monthly is more than I can swing right now. I am not asking for all of it. Even a couple thousand would help me stay on track." He turned a page. The paper made a crisp sound in the quiet kitchen. He still had not looked at me. He still had not looked at the folder. "There is no money left, Nate." "Dad, I am not asking for a lot, just enough to keep the payment plan from falling behind." I said there is no money. Y'all, you need to handle your own kid. He said, your own kid the way you say your own car or your own lawn. Like Lily was a piece of property I had purchased and was now asking someone else to maintain. He said it standing sideways, one hand on the newspaper, reading glasses on, coffee mug steaming. He did not look at me. He did not look at the folder. He did not pause. I stood there for a long time. The kitchen smelled like coffee and the faint trace of whatever my mother had cooked the night before. The clock above the stove ticked. The folder sat on the table between us like a patient in a waiting room that would never be called. "The folder has the bills in it," I said. "You can look at them if you want." "I do not need to look at them. I told you my answer." I picked up the folder. I put it under my arm. I walked out of the kitchen, or through the hallway, past the family photos on the wall where my brother's wedding portrait hangs at eye level and my high school graduation photo hangs near the ceiling where you have to tilt your head to see it. I got in my truck. I put the folder on the passenger seat. The check engine light glowed orange on the dashboard. I sat there for 10 minutes with the engine off, looking at my father's house through the windshield, and I did not feel angry. I felt something heavier. The feeling of a man who just confirmed something he had suspected for years but hoped was not true. The folder is still in my nightstand. Same place I put it that afternoon. My father never learned what was inside. 4 days later, Saturday. My mother called Friday and invited me to a family gathering at the house. Just a little get-together, she said. Everyone will be there. Bring Lily. She did not say what it was for. She did not need to. In my family, little get-together means my father has something to announce and he wants an audience. I drove to the house Saturday afternoon. Lily was in the back seat in a sundress, still wearing the hospital bracelet she refused to take off because she liked the way her name looked in small blue letters on the white plastic band. My truck rattled over the speed bump at the end of my parents' street. The check engine light stared at me from the dashboard like a question I kept choosing not to answer. I saw it before I parked. A brand new black SUV sitting in the driveway. The chrome was so clean it reflected the sky. The tires were so dark they looked like they had been painted. And on the hood, tied with the kind of precision that only comes from someone who cared deeply about the presentation, was a red bow. I parked behind it. I got out. Lily got out. She looked at the SUV and said, "That car is really shiny." I took her hand and we walked toward the garage where the family was gathered. 14 people, aunts, uncles, cousins, neighbors. My brother Kyle was standing next to the SUV with his wife Amanda. My father was beside him, his arm around Kyle's shoulder, his face arranged in the expression he saves for moments he considers significant. He raised a glass. The driveway went quiet. 14 people standing in the afternoon sun, holding drinks and paper plates, turning their attention to the man at the center of the frame. "I want to say a few words about my son," he said. He meant Kyle. He always means Kyle. Kyle just got promoted to regional director at his firm. He has worked hard for this. He has built something real, a career, a family, a life worth being proud of. He paused. He looked at the SUV. He put his hand on the hood like he was touching something holy. This is what happens when you build something worth being proud of. This is what a father does when his son earns it. Earns it. He used that word. In a driveway where I was standing. 4 days after he told me there was no money left for my daughter's surgery bills. He said, "earns," like it was a key that only fit one lock, and that lock was attached to the door of a brand new SUV with a red bow. His mother told me he spent 30 minutes tying in the dealership parking lot because he wanted it perfect. 30 minutes on a bow, 0 minutes on a folder. He handed Kyle the keys. The driveway erupted, clapping, hugs. My uncle slapped Kyle on the back. My cousin took a video. Amanda positioned Kyle beside the driver's door, told him to hold the keys up, and took 6 photos from 3 angles. She posted the best one to Instagram before the family had finished clapping. Caption: "Best dad in the world." My father liked it within minutes. He commented, "Nothing but the best for my boy." I was standing near the back of the driveway, where I always stand at family events. Near the curb, near my truck, near the edge of whatever is being celebrated. Lily was beside me, holding my hand. She had been quiet since we arrived, the way she always gets in crowds of people she does not know well enough to trust. She tugged my hand and said, "Dad, can I show Grandpa my bracelet?" I looked at her. At the small blue letters spelling her name on the white plastic band. At the face of a girl who still believed her grandfather was the kind of man who wanted to see things she was proud of. "Sure, baby, go ahead." She walked across the driveway. She stepped past 3 cousins, ducked under an aunt's arm, and stopped in front of my father. She held out her wrist. "Look, Grandpa, they gave me a bracelet at the hospital. It has my name on it." He looked at it. 1 second. Maybe less. The kind of look you give a clock you do not need to read. The kind of look that registers shape without content. "That's nice, sweetheart." He turned back to Kyle. He put his hand on Kyle's shoulder. He started talking about the car's safety features and how Amanda said the backup camera was important with the kids. Lily walked back to me. She did not say anything. She just took my hand again and stood beside me while the driveway continued celebrating a car that cost 4 times my daughter's surgery. My father spent 30 minutes on a bow and 1 second on a bracelet. The bow was for a vehicle. The bracelet was for a child who went through surgery at 10 years old and thought her grandfather might want to see her name in blue. I did the math that night, sitting in my truck in the driveway while Lily slept in the back seat. I pulled up the SUV model on my phone. $47,000. I pulled up the medical bill. $11,214. The difference. $35,786. That is the distance between his two sons measured by the man who said there was no money left. I saved the screenshot, not as evidence, as a compass. So I would never lose direction on who my father actually is. Sunday morning. I loaded Lily into the truck and drove home. She fell asleep before we hit the highway. I drove with one hand on the wheel and the other resting on the folder that was still sitting on the passenger seat from Tuesday. The same folder, the same bills, the same handwritten note my father never read. I passed the SUV on the way out of the driveway. The red bow was still on the hood. Nobody had taken it off yet. It sat there like a decoration on a verdict. Bright and cheerful and completely unaware of what it cost. I did not look in the rearview mirror, not once. My mother called that evening. Not to ask about Lily's recovery, not to ask how I was handling the bills, to smooth. Your father is under a lot of stress, Nate. The business, the house, everything. He did not mean it the way it sounded. He seemed pretty relaxed on Saturday. That was different. That was for Kyle's promotion. He had been planning that for months. He had been planning a $47,000 car for months. But there was no money left on Tuesday. She paused. I could hear her breathing. The slow, careful breathing of a woman choosing between honesty and management. She chose management. Your father loves you. He just shows it differently. Yeah, Mom, I noticed. She has been running this translation service for 30 years, converting favoritism into personality, turning neglect into love expressed differently. I had been subscribing to it my whole life. That Sunday evening, standing in my kitchen while Lily colored at the table, I canceled the subscription, and the weeks after the ceremony were the hardest financially and the clearest emotionally. I paid Lily's bills myself. I reworked my budget the way you rework a circuit when half the panel is dead. I found the lines that could carry more, and I cut the ones that could not. I picked up Saturday shifts at a commercial site that needed extra hands. I ate peanut butter sandwiches for lunch 5 days a week. I made coffee at home with a machine that cost $11 at a thrift store and made coffee that tasted like it remembered being better once. Lily's follow-up appointments continued. Every 6 weeks, I drove her to the clinic, sat in the waiting room with a magazine I never finished, and paid the copay from a budget I had rebuilt around the absence of anyone's help but my own. Her hearing improved. At the 8-week check, the doctor showed me an audiogram and pointed at numbers that had changed. I nodded like I understood the chart. I did not understand the chart. I understood the smile on Lily's face when she told me she could hear the birds outside her bedroom window now. The ones that sing early in the morning. The ones she used to think were only in one ear. At the 12-week check, she told the doctor she could hear the ocean in a seashell now. She brought the seashell with her in her backpack to prove it. The doctor smiled. I almost cried in the parking lot afterward. I did not. I started the truck, turned on the radio, and drove my daughter home. The check engine light was still on. It would be on for a long time, but the girl in the passenger seat could hear the radio in both ears, and that was worth more than any light on any dashboard. On every birthday during this period, a card arrived from my father. Pre-printed message. $20 bill inside. His name signed in handwriting that looked like it was written while standing up, already on his way somewhere else. The card was always 2 days late because he does not know Lily's birthday without asking my mother, and my mother sometimes gets the date wrong. Kyle's children got birthday parties funded by my father. Presents chosen with attention. 1 year, a bicycle with a matching helmet. Another year, a trip to a water park with the whole family invited. Lily got Andrew Jackson in an envelope that arrived 48 hours after the candles should have been blown out. She put the $20 in a jar on her desk and said, "That was nice of Grandpa." I did not correct her. I let her believe it was nice. Because she is 10. And 10-year-olds should be allowed to believe that the people who share their last name also share their love. I did not make a decision. I just stopped. But before I tell you about the stopping, I need to tell you about the years of not stopping. Because the weight of what I withdrew only makes sense if you know what I was carrying. Over the past 5 years, I had driven to my father's house at least a dozen times for emergency repairs. Things that broke and needed a son who knew how to fix them. The roof leaked 2 winters ago. I spent a Saturday on a ladder in December rain, patching shingles while my father watched from the garage holding a coffee. The garbage disposal broke 18 months ago. I replaced it on a Sunday morning. I'm lying on my back under the kitchen sink in the same kitchen where the 6 words would later be spoken. The sump pump in the basement failed the winter before that. I drove over at 11 at night in the rain because the basement was flooding and my father said it was an emergency. Last April, the wiring in the garage tripped a breaker and I rewired the panel while Kyle was at a work dinner 30 miles away. I calculated the value of this labor once, out of curiosity. I used the rates my company charges commercial clients: standard electrician rate, standard handyman rate for the non-electrical work. The total came to just over $9,000. More than enough to cover the medical bill my father said he could not help with. I did not mention this to him. I did not bring it up at the kitchen table. I just knew the number. And I filed it in the same place I filed everything else. Quietly, without interest, until interest was owed. Every one of these repairs followed the same pattern. My father called. I drove over. I fixed the problem. He said thank you sometimes. He never offered to pay. He never asked if I needed anything. He never once in 5 years of emergency calls followed up with a conversation that started with, "How are you doing?" The calls only went in one direction, toward the problem, never toward the person solving it. So when I stopped, the stopping was not a single moment. It was the removal of a system nobody knew was running. I stopped calling on Sundays. I stopped driving over when my mother mentioned something needed fixing. I stopped responding to the group text about Thanksgiving planning. I stopped answering the door when the knock came from a direction I no longer trusted. One by one, the services stopped. The gutter stayed clogged. The garage door kept sticking. A pipe under the kitchen sink started leaking in October, and nobody fixed it. My mother put a bowl underneath it and called it handled. The driveway light burned out. The screen door hinge came loose. The small things that I had been repairing for years, silently, without invoice, without recognition, piled up like mail at a house nobody lives in anymore. It took almost 2 months for my father to notice something had changed. 2 months. That is how invisible the labor was. That is how deeply embedded I was in the infrastructure of his house without being embedded in his consideration. He did not notice I was gone until the house started breaking. And even then, he did not call to ask if I was okay. He called because the furnace broke. Lily's follow-up appointments continued. Every 6 weeks, I drove her to the clinic, sat in the waiting room, and paid the copay from a budget I had redesigned around the absence of anyone's help but my own. Her hearing improved. The doctor said the surgery was a success. Lily told him she could hear the ocean in a seashell now, which she could not do before. The doctor smiled. I almost cried in the parking lot. I did not. I started the truck, turned on the radio, and drove my daughter home. Every birthday during this period, a card arrived from my father. Pre-printed message, $20 bill inside, his name signed in handwriting that looked like it was written while standing up, already on his way somewhere else. The card was always 2 days late. He did not know Lily's birthday. He got the date from my mother, who sometimes got it wrong. The brothers' kids got parties, funded by my father. Presents chosen with care. 1 year a bicycle, another year a trip to an amusement park. Lily got Andrew Jackson in an envelope that arrived on the wrong day. November. The furnace broke on a Thursday night. The first real cold snap of the season. Temperature dropped to 28 degrees. The kind of cold that finds every crack in a house and pushes through, like it has been waiting all year for permission. My father called me Friday morning at 7:42 a.m. I was in the kitchen making Lily's lunch for school. Peanut butter sandwich, apple slices, a juice box, and a note I put in the bag every day that says something different. In that day it said, "You are the best thing I ever built." I fold the note in half and tuck it between the sandwich and the apple so she finds it when she opens the bag. She has never once mentioned the notes to me. But I found a shoebox in her closet last month with every single one of them stacked inside in order. She kept them all. My father's name appeared on the phone screen. I looked at it the way you look at a bill you already know the amount of. I let it ring. 5 times. 6. Voicemail. He called again at noon. I was on a job, pulling wire through a wall in a new office build. My hands were full. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I let it ring. He called a third time at 5:15 p.m. I was parked outside Lily's after-school program. I'm waiting for her to come through the door with her backpack dragging on the ground because she refuses to use both straps no matter how many times I tell her the zipper will break. I picked up. Nate. His voice was different. Not the voice from the kitchen table, not the newspaper voice, not the sideways voice that says 6 words without looking up. This voice had something in it I had never heard from my father before. Need. Raw, uncovered, unable to hide it need. I need your help. The furnace went out last night. The whole system. No heat in the house. I called Morrison Heating and they want $4,000. They cannot come until next Wednesday. That is 5 days, Nate. 5 days in a house with no heat. I sat in my truck. The engine was running. The heater was on. My breath was not visible. My house was warm. Lily's school was warm. The truck was warm. My father's house was not. Nate, are you there? I am here, Dad. Can you come tonight? Your mother is wearing her coat inside the house. She has been wearing it since last night. Through the windshield, I watched Lily come through the door of the building. Her backpack was bouncing behind her. She waved at a friend over her shoulder, a big wave, the kind where her whole arm moves and her body leans with it. She saw my truck and smiled. The full smile. The one that starts at her mouth and reaches her eyes and makes her glasses lift slightly on her cheeks. She opened the passenger door and climbed in. She dropped her backpack on the floor and said, "Dad, guess what? We learned about volcanoes today and I gotta make one explode with baking soda. It went everywhere." Mrs. Munt Patterson was not happy, but everyone clapped. I held up one finger. She nodded and started digging in her backpack for something. I looked at the windshield, at the parking lot, at the afternoon light that was already turning cold and orange. I thought about the kitchen table, the newspaper, the coffee mug, the folder that sat untouched for 10 minutes, the 6 words delivered sideways by a man who could not be bothered to look at me while he dismissed my daughter's medical bills. I thought about the red bow, the driveway, the toast, the 1-second glance at a hospital bracelet. I thought about $9,000 in free labor and a $20 birthday card that arrived 2 days late with his name signed in handwriting that looked like it was written while walking away. "Dad," I said into the phone. "Yes, you need to handle that yourself." The line went quiet. Not the quiet of anger, not the quiet of someone thinking of a response. The quiet of a man hearing a sentence he has said before, in a voice that is not his, coming back through a phone line like a letter returned to the address it was sent from. Same words. Same flat delivery. Same refusal to pause. Same currency. Returned to sender. He did not speak for a long time. I could hear the silence of a cold house behind him. No furnace hum. No baseboard heat clicking. Just the hollow quiet of a building that has lost the thing that kept it warm. And the man who used to keep it warm had just spoken the same 6 words that were spoken to him in June, in the same kitchen, from the same mouth, in the same tone. "Nate, this is serious. The house is freezing." "So was the hospital room, Dad. If for 9 days. He did not respond. I did not need him to. The transaction was complete. Same currency, exact change. The account was closed. "Good night, Dad." I hung up. Lily looked at me. "Who was that?" "Nobody important." "Can we get chicken nuggets?" "We can absolutely get chicken nuggets." She smiled. She buckled her seatbelt. I pulled out of the parking lot and drove toward the drive-thru on Maple Street, the one that gives extra sauce if you ask nicely, which Lily always does. He called Kyle after he called me. The Golden Sun, the regional director, the man with the SUV and the leather seats and the career that gets toasts in driveways. Kyle said he would look into it. He did not look into it. He did not drive over. He does not know how a furnace works. He has never crawled under a house or opened a panel or replaced a filter. He has never fixed anything in that house because there was always someone else who did. My father sat in a cold house that night, wearing his coat, reading his newspaper by lamplight. The same newspaper he was reading on Tuesday when he told me there was no money left. The house was the same house. The kitchen was the same kitchen. But the son who used to keep it running was not coming. And the son who got the SUV could not figure out the thermostat. The contractor came the following Wednesday. The bill was $4,000. My father paid it from the same account that produced the $47,000 SUV. The money was there. It was always there. It was just never available in the direction of the son who needed it. 2 days after the furnace call, my mother called me. Her voice was different too. Not smoothing, not translating, sharp. Your father is sitting in a cold house and you cannot be bothered to come help after everything he has done for you? I listened. I let her finish. Then I said something I had never said to my mother in 32 years of being her son. Mom, I have been fixing things in that house for 5 years without being asked if I needed anything in return. I asked once. For my daughter. He would not even open the folder. So I am done being the person who keeps that house running for a man who would not spend 5 minutes reading a bill for his own granddaughter. That is not going to change. And the next time you call to tell me he shows love differently, like I want you to remember the red bow he spent 30 minutes tying on a car for Kyle, 4 days after he told me to handle my own kid. She went quiet. I could hear the television in the background. The same television that was playing in the back of the house on Tuesday when I brought the folder. The same noise covering the same silence. He is your father, Nate. And she is his granddaughter. The call ended. I set the phone on the counter. Lily was in the living room watching a show about ocean animals. I could hear the narrator describing a whale migration pattern. Lily called out, "Dad, did you know blue whales can talk to each other from 1,000 miles away?" I did not know that. They use sound waves, low ones, like really low. Most humans cannot even hear them. That is amazing, Lily. I know. I'm going to study that one day. I stood in the kitchen doorway and looked at her. Cross-legged on the carpet, glasses reflecting the blue glow of the television, completely absorbed in a world of whales and sound waves and futures she had already started building in her imagination. She did not know about the folder. She did not know about the 6 words. She did not know about the SUV or the red bow or the 4-day gap, or the math I did in the driveway or the furnace call. I declined on a Thursday evening while she told me about volcanoes. She did not know any of it. She just knew her father was in the kitchen, and that was enough. A few weeks later, on a Sunday evening, Lily was doing homework at the kitchen table. Math, long division, long. And she was working through the problems with the slow concentration of a girl who does not rush because she would rather get it right than get it done. She looked up. "Dad? Yeah? Why doesn't Grandpa come over anymore?" I set my coffee down. I looked at her glasses, at her pencil, at the homework sheet in front of her, covered in neat rows of numbers she had divided carefully into parts that made sense. I did not tell her about the folder. I did not tell her about the 6 words or the SUV or the red bow or the 4-day gap. I did not tell her that her grandfather looked at her hospital bracelet for 1 second and turned away. I did not tell her about the furnace or the phone call or the sentence I returned like a letter that had been delivered to the wrong address for 32 years. I said, "Yin, some people are not good at showing up for the people who need them, baby. That is not your fault. And it is not something you need to fix." She thought about this. Her pencil tapped the table twice. Then she nodded. The way she nods when she has decided an answer is acceptable, even if it is not complete. "Okay," she said. She went back to her homework. The pencil moved across the paper. Steady, careful, dividing numbers into parts that made sense. I sat across from her and listened to the scratch of the pencil against the page, the quietest sound in the world, and the most important one in the room.